Hi, everybody. So I wanted to introduce you to the new series that we're going to be doing about the portion of the week. And it's going to be a light version of what this story is, with actual covering everything that happens in the portion, and then some tidbits here and there of things that we can take away and that will help us in our life. Thank you. This week's portion is the portion of Noach. And 10 long generations after Adam and Eve, we meet Noah. And he is actually the hero of this portion. So the people who lived during the time of Noah were not honest. They stole, they robbed, they lied. You name it, they did it. They were wicked and they didn't follow God. They didn't follow the Creator. And the only righteous person in that whole generation was Noah. Now God tells Noah that he's planning on destroying the entire world by bringing a great flood. He tells Noah to build an ark, a teva, it's called in Hebrew, where he and his family and animals, all the creatures that God wanted to save, will escape from the flood. It takes Noah 120 years to build the ark. And do you know why? God wanted to give a chance to the people of his generation to repent. And we'll go into all of this in a little while. I just want to give you the actual, overview and story of the portion. So Noah builds the ark very, very slowly. And whenever people pass by, can you imagine this guy? I don't know if you ever saw the movie Evan Almighty, I think, where it's a spin-off of Noah's Ark, where he's building the ark slowly and people are passing by and they're asking him what he's doing. And Noah says, I'm building an ark because God will destroy the world if you don't repent, if you don't start changing your lying and deceiving and cheating and your wicked ways. He's going to destroy the world. And he tells them, you know what, repent, you still have a chance. It's going to take a long time. And so the people pass by, they hear him, but they don't listen. And sadly, the day comes when God tells Noah to go into the ark with his sons and their wives and to take a male and female of every animal. And we'll explain, he takes basically 7 kinds of each, male and female of the kosher animals and birds, and 1 of each of the impure animals and birds, and he puts them all in the ark. And when he seals the ark, the drops of rain start to fall, and they slowly become bigger and bigger. And God still wants to give a last-minute chance to the people to repent, to show them that this time it's real. The flood is going to come, but maybe they'll change their minds. Maybe they'll repent. And the rain becomes a flood that lasts 40 days and 40 nights. And the entire world is covered in water and everything is destroyed. When the flood is over, the earth is still covered with water and the ark, the teva, floats around for a long time. After another 150 days, so we've had 40 days and 40 nights of rain, and now 150 days, it finally settles on a place called the Mount of Ararat. And Noah sends a raven out of the ark, and then he sends a few doves to see if the land is dry yet, to see if he can get out. And finally, after a few weeks, a dove comes back with an olive branch in its beak. And Noah understands that the earth has dried, and finally God commands him to exit the ark. When he leaves, Noah builds an altar and offers sacrifices to the Creator to thank him for sparing his life. And God swears that he will never again destroy the entire world and uses the rainbow as a sign. And we'll talk about that also later, why the rainbow. Now, to go on further into the portion, Noah planted a vineyard. He made wine, he became drunk, and he fell into a deep slumber. While he was naked, Noah's son, Ham, saw his father naked, assaulted him, basically cut off his thingy, and informed his true brothers of their father's state. The brothers, Shem and Yafet, modestly approached their father, covered him, took him back, took care of him. And when Noah woke up, he realized what happened, and he cursed Ham's son, Canaan, and blessed Shem and Yafet. Now, again, we'll go back later into why did he curse Ham's son and not Ham, his own son. This section then names Noah's 70 grandsons and great-grandsons, and basically they were the 70 nations, and they adopted their own lands. And for the next 10 generations, everyone speaks the same language and has the same customs. And at one point, through a large group of people get together and they decide to build a tower with which they could reach into the sky and to show that they are as powerful as the Creator. At this point, God makes all the people speak a different language, so no one can understand each other, and there's a great mess. And of course, the tower comes to a halt. They can't build the tower anymore, and the people separate into different nations. And finally, at the end of the portion, we meet Avram, or Avraham, the hero of the next few portions, and the great-great-great-great-grandson of Noach. And basically, that's what the portion is about, in a little bit of a nutshell. So there's a couple of things that I wanted to talk about and that could explain a little bit more about the portion. The first thing is something that I am reading from a Kabbalist, a very famous Kabbalist called Shemi Shmuel. And his name is, I'll tell you now in 1 second. His name, I believe, is Rabbi Shmuel Bornstein. Yes, his name is Rabbi Shmuel Bornstein. And he lived in 1850s, 1900s. And, he talks about, because the portion starts with Noah was a righteous man in his generation. So then there's a couple of questions. What does that mean, Noah was a righteous man, pure in his generation? And there are contradictory opinions. One opinion says that he was righteous, but he was only righteous because everyone in his generation was wicked. So he was considered righteous. A different opinion speaks about the fact that he was righteous and that if he had been in a generation of more righteous people, he would have been even more righteous. And Shemi Shmuel, Rabbi Bornstein, comes to talk about this contradiction. And he says, there was no question that Noach was a righteous person. And it says that his issue was his strength of heart. What does that mean, strength of heart? What he's talking about is, it's one thing when you have an opinion about something and you're convinced by others to change your opinion. And it's another thing when you have your opinion and you stand steadfast and no matter what anyone tells you, you know you're right and you don't change your opinion. Noach didn't have the strength to not change his opinion. He didn't have the conviction to go against the wicked people of his generation. And the reason that he had that was not because he was, God forbid, a terrible person. I mean, these people were giants. They weren't even human beings, really. They were giants. But where his weakness came from was humility. And there's different kinds of humility. Noah was so humble that, according to the stories, he wasn't aware of any difference between himself and the other people of the generation. He didn't realize that he was a tzaddik. He didn't realize that he was better than the other people of his generation. So he thought that only because of the kindness of the Creator was he and his family being saved from the flood. That it wasn't his own spiritual achievements, but that it was because the Creator was deciding to save him. And unfortunately, sometimes such a high level of humility can stand in the way of someone realistically assessing people in front of them. And, most of us, I know I'm not, but most of us haven't reached that level of humbleness yet. A person this humble can fall into the prey of others. A person this humble, not naive, but humble, can really not understand what's going on around him. Another example of a person from the Bible who had this kind of humbleness was Joshua. And when Moses realized it, he added, and we'll talk about it in a later portion, he added the letter Hey to Joshua's name so that it became Yoshua, meaning God will save him. Because Moses knew that Joshua needed that extra strength of the Creator because he was so humble to push him through. So it was possible that Noach, exposed to the generation of people who were on a higher spiritual level, might have been stronger. And this is something that we can learn for ourselves. One of the things that I've learned in my studies of Kabbalah is that one of the most important things is who you surround yourself with. Because none of us are 100% so strong that nothing affects us. So we need to be careful who we surround ourselves with. And Noach knew probably that he wasn't that strong to change everybody around him, but he also did it in a quiet way. Because there are righteous people that come to this world to lead everybody and motivate everybody and speak to everybody and help change them. And then there's the righteous people who are here to help people change by example. And that's why it took 120 years to build the ark. That's why the Creator gave Noah 120 years to build the ark. Because through that time, he also worked on himself, on his humility, and on doing something that was for the Creator. And he also was able to lead by example. Because when people passed by, they would say, "What are you doing?" And he would say, "I'm building an ark because the Creator's going to bring a flood." And he would keep on saying it and keep on saying it, hoping that people would listen. But in the end, of course, we know what happened. There was a flood. Now, the question came up, why the rainbow? So it said that the flood was like the Creator shooting a bow from the sky through an arrow, because the actual rain was like fire. It said that during the time of the flood, the generation, they were giants. They had everything so perfect. It was like the Garden of Eden. What happened, why did the flood really happen? Not that they were just lying and they were wicked people, but they had everything. It was the Garden of Eden. They would plant a seed and they wouldn't need food for another 40 years. It would last them 40 years. They were giants. Think their ankles probably reached the top of the trees. They were literally giants. It says that there are stories that says that women used to get pregnant and give birth in one day. There was no cause and effect. Everything was perfect. Now, what happens when everything is perfect? You think that you're the one doing everything. You don't think about the Creator. You don't appreciate. When everything around them was so perfect, they didn't appreciate that there was a Creator. So what did they say when Noah told them that there was going to be a flood? They said, "You know what? If the water comes from below, we'll put our feet on top of the springs and block the water from coming. If the water comes from above, we'll make sure to spread it out so that we won't be drowned by it, because it'll maybe come up to our necks because we're so big." But what happened? When the rain started falling, it wasn't just regular rain. It was rain with fire. So that these giants, even if they tried to step on it, they couldn't stop the water because it was fire. It was burning them. 120 years. So the Creator shot a bow and arrow. Now, what does the rainbow look like? A rainbow looks like an opposite arrow. An upside down bow, sorry. And so the rainbow was there as a promise from the Creator never to destroy the world again. And that's in a nutshell. Now, to go a little bit more into Noah and his righteousness. It says, one of the commentators says that even though Noah was righteous, it didn't seem like it was still worthwhile for the Creator to protect the world because of him. What does that mean? It says Moses didn't ask anything for the Creator on his own merit, but he depended on the patriarchs. Noah, unlike Moses, had no other person whose merit he could depend on. It was 10 generations between Adam and Noah was the only righteous person. So the commentators say that even though that was the case, when the Creator said, "I will establish my covenant with you," there's the argument saying Noah should have said, "You know what, let's save the rest of the world as well." And he should have sacrificed an offering and really tried to make the flood not happen. Maybe that would have quieted the judgment. And of course the question comes up, but what would have the sacrifice done? Because the wicked of the world deliberately wanted to make the Creator angry. And if Noah had made that sacrifice, it wouldn't have helped. And he actually was afraid for his life. He was afraid for himself, that he wouldn't be entangled, like I said, because he knew that he was not that strong to stand against his generation. He didn't want to die. And he had seen the wicked deeds that were going on around him and how these people were making the Creator angry every day. And as long as the wicked increases in the world, when a righteous person is found among them, he's the one that takes it on himself first. When Moses saw everything that was happening with the golden calf, he took it on him first. Aaron took it on him first. So how did God save Noach, who was actually righteous from everyone else? Noach was saved so that he could bring further generations into the world because he was truly righteous. And not only that, but Noach warned them every day, and they didn't pay attention. And the verse says, if you warn the wicked, you have delivered your soul. What does that mean? We learn that whoever warns the wicked, even if the wicked doesn't listen to them, that person saves himself, while the wicked are punished according to their sins. What does that mean? How far should the warning go? When we see a person doing something bad, and today, of course, the wicked of those generations and the wicked of today is two different things. It's almost a joke, the wicked of today. But when you see someone doing something that's not good for them, how far do you go? You go as far as you can. You go as far as you can, but in a humble way, the way Noach did it, to help them see what they're doing wrong. So what can we learn from the portion of Noach? There are a couple of things we can learn. First of all, there's humility. There's Noah being in a generation where everyone around him was wicked. And he knew the ways of the Creator. And he knew that if he would just listen to the Creator, he would be saved and he would be able to save his family. Second thing, and this is something that's called a Jewish law. Imagine now you're in the ark, and mind you, the Creator says take your sons, their wives, your wife, and take one of each animal that's impure, and 7 of each animal, male and female, that are pure. Can you imagine how many animals they had in this ark? First of all, it was a gigantic ark. Second of all, think about it. Who was there to take care of the animals? Noach, his wife, his sons, and their wives. That's it. They had to take care of the animals. And this is a Jewish law. You're supposed to feed your animal even before you eat. You have to take care of the animals. And of course, not all the animals were eating and sleeping at the same time. So all day and all night, they were busy taking care of these animals and feeding them. There's even a story about a certain bird that his cage was like in the middle of all of the animals and he didn't get food. And mind you, they spoke the language of the animals. And Noah realized that he didn't give food to this bird, and he asked the bird, why didn't you say anything? And the bird said, well, I didn't want to bother you. I saw how hard you were working to take care of everyone. And I believe that Noah blessed him that he would live forever. And I think that there's some kind of a rare bird that exists till today. So that's another lesson of how we can take care of animals, how we can take care of creatures before us. And then there's the lesson of how to talk to people around us. Noach didn't come and impose his way on everyone around him, but he was given the opportunity of building the ark over 120 years. And he took those 120 years to work and to build the ark and to think about himself and any kind of negativities that he needed to clean. And when anybody came and talked to him, he would share with them, listen, the Creator is going to destroy the world. Please change your ways. See what I'm doing. To come to a person when you know that they're doing something not good and to tell them what to do, not everyone is open to that way. But if we come to a person and we think, okay, how can we help them see? And we do something that hopefully they will see that we're doing that helps, and they'll want to do it themselves. Last week in Bereshit, Eliyahu said that there's 2 important things that we should do. 1 is we shouldn't speak bad about other people. And 2 is we should try and keep Shabbat. Noach wasn't busy going to the Creator speaking bad about the wicked people around him. Saying they don't want to listen, they're terrible. No, he was busy with his work. And when a person came, he did the best he could to help them see, to help them change. And the Creator gave them endless opportunities. And Noach was there every step of the way. So I think one thing that we can take away with us this week is, who was Noach? Noach was a humble person. Noach was somebody that knew the way of the Creator, knew what was right, did what was right. He didn't impose it on others, but he tried to show others through his actions and through his words and through his experience how things could be better in life. So hopefully this week we can take away with us the strength and the knowledge of Noach. Now, after the flood, God gave the world 7 universal principles, 7 universal mitzvot it's called, and it's called the 7 laws of Noach. And this is for everyone. Every single person who exists in the world. It doesn't matter if you're Jewish or Christian or whatever you are. These 7 laws are the laws that everyone needs to go by. And the actual 7th law happened when Noach came out of the ark. The Creator gave him the commandments that he was allowed to eat meat, because up until then, no generation had eaten meat. But the law was that he wasn't allowed to eat any kind of limb or part of the animal that was still that was taken from the animal while it was still alive. So the animal had to be slaughtered, and then they could eat the meat. And Shem Mishmuel, Rabbi Bornstein, he tries to explain this law of not eating from the limbs of a live animal by looking at the spiritual side of it. And he says that the issue of not eating a limb served from a live animal comes up when Joseph brings negative reports of his brothers to his father Jacob. And Joseph hints that his brothers are sinning against this law of eating from the limb. And what exactly is he accusing them of? He says that Joseph was a righteous person on a higher level than his brothers. And it says that the righteous man who is the foundation of the world, is the leader of that generation. And each of his brothers was on such a high level that they each set an example. And Joseph could see the greatness of his brothers because he was aware of their righteousness. And he was convinced that they were also aware of their higher level. And when they failed to recognize that they failed to recognize Joseph as a righteous person, he felt that they were acting as severed limbs. They were guilty of separating themselves from the living. Therefore, they were guilty in the spiritual sense of eating a limb severed from a live animal. And because he felt that they were guilty in the spiritual sense, he assumed that they must be guilty physically as well. Noach was also a righteous person in his generation. And he was the righteous person upon which the whole entire generation depended. However, the people of his generation were so wicked that they had no connection with him whatsoever. They were like severed limbs, without any link to the live body, the leader of the generation, Noah. So what does this mean? What is Rabbi Bornstein saying? In the story with Joseph and the brothers, and we'll talk about that way in a couple of weeks from now, his brothers were jealous of him, but all the brothers were righteous. Joseph was on a higher level than them. They didn't recognize that. He thought that because they didn't recognize that he was on a higher spiritual level, that he was one of the righteous people holding up his generation, that it was like severing a limb from an animal. Noach was the head of his generation. He was the righteous person in his generation. And everyone around him was disconnected from him. They didn't realize that he was on a high spiritual level, and that if they would connect to him, they would be able to save themselves as well. And that's why it talks here about the severed limb. Noach's strength was that he was able to fend off all the temptations of his generation, all the wickedness, all the robbing and the lying and the everything. He was able to not connect to it. And that was not easy. And it's definitely not easy for any of us. It's not a natural achievement for anyone to not be blinded by all of the materialistic things that are going on around us, by the chaos, by COVID. All of us fall into it. And what do we forget? We forget that there's a creator. We forget that there's a spiritual system. He wasn't tempted. He wasn't tempted by being part of the severed limbs. He wasn't tempted by everything that was going on around him. And for that reason, Noach was a righteous person. because he was able to not fall into the illusions of that generation. And now I want to share with you something that maybe speaks more to our day. You know, think about you've designated the weekend in your crazy life for some quality time with your family, and all of a sudden the phone rings. And of course, it's an emergency, and you have to get involved. Now, you've set aside the evening for volunteering in your community, and now you're stuck with your neighborhood mechanic taking care of your car. Few of us today really are facing a real flood. You know, we don't have real water coming, you know, the Creator promised not to do that anymore. So we don't have real floods. We don't have real things going on. But we're all familiar with the experience of being flooded with chaos, being flooded with taking care of the material world, of being swamped with all sorts of things demanding our attention. Just when we were finally getting down to the things that are truly important to us, truly precious to us. And there's explanations that the flood, which is described in this portion, is really a prototype for the challenges that we all face. The flood of the material concerns, the threats to, you know, quench our desires, to quench our flame for spirituality. And our sages tell us that Noah's flood began as an ordinary rainfall with the misdeeds of man, with the wicked generation, and it escalated into the flood. In other words, in their proportion and their context, things happened slowly. But then all of a sudden it just burst. So what does the flood mean for us? The first month of the year, which we just finished, the month of Tishrei, is completely devoted to spirituality and the holidays, and we repent and we renew our spirituality, and we have Rosh Hashanah, and then we have Yom Kippur, and then we have the celebration of Sukkot, and we've explained all of those holidays, and we're busy that month. Then comes Cheshvan, and we go back to our daily life. We go back to our materialistic life, and in Cheshvan, rain begins to fall. In Israel, actually, in Cheshvan, rain begins to fall. After maybe 6 months that usually it doesn't rain in Israel. And what does that mean? It means that we return to life, and we return to the daily things that we have to do every day. And actually, Cheshvan doesn't have any holiday in it. So what does that mean for us? It means that we need to work harder to be able to realize that, wait, let's stop. Let's build our own ark. What's our own ark? Our own ark is the Torah study. Our own ark is the study of spirituality. Our own ark is to see how we can influence the people around us. Not everyone has to think gigantic, like a leader, let's do our whole generation. But how are we influencing our friends? How are we influencing our families? Maybe we can share a story that you just heard here, and that will influence them to help other people, and maybe change one or two things, not to go back to the robotic, mundane, materialistic life of the floods of all the chaos that surround us every single day.